Back to the grind with the only free MMA channel that fucking matters, full-time MMA. And I'm getting to work a little late today because my girl had to do something with the car. So, well, I figured I might as well do my UFC on Fox Kevin Gastelum versus Chris Weidman predictions in the meantime. So let's get it. Let's get to it. There's only 4 fights on the main card, but there's like 5 fights on the Fight Pass prelims, and then there's some fights on the Fox Sports 1 prelims. But we'll just be doing predictions on the main card here, and these are all good fights. Every one of the fighters on this main card is ranked. So, and the matchups, there's going to be some exciting fights, entertaining fights, except for maybe the main event, but we'll get to that later. The first fight's going to open the night up. All right, let's get to it. So the first fight is, we got, I believe it's Thomas Almeida, right? Yeah, Jimmy Rivera versus Thomas Almeida. Good fight. Jimmy Rivera is ranked number 4. He's 20-1, 4-0 in the UFC. He's got wins over Uriah Faber, Lurie Alcantara, Pedro Munoz, and Marcus Brimage, all notable fighters. Thomas Almeida is 22-1, 5-1 in the UFC, ranked number 9. He's got wins over Albert Morales most recently, Anthony Burchak, Brad Pickett, and he's also got a KO loss to Cody Garbrandt, which got Cody Garbrandt his title shot. Thomas Almeida, I will say, is the more exciting fighter out of these two fighters. Out of his 5 wins, 4 of those are knockout KOs, all performance of the night, and the other one was a decision, and that was fight of the night. So he's definitely an entertaining fighter. He's going out there and risking it for the biscuit, and that's how he ended up getting caught versus Cody Garbrandt and going down. Jimmy Rivera, he's more of a smarter fighter. He's got a wrestling base. He's really good. I watched his last fight versus Uriah Faber, and I was really impressed. He's actually dark horse, I would say. I think he's one of the best bantamweights out there, but I forgot the exact injury, but this last year he hasn't been as active as he would like to be. I think it's been about 9 to 10 months since his last fight. It was last September, so whatever the math is on that. So after his win over Uriah Faber, he hasn't really had another fight, but still, he's a good guy. This fight's hard to call, but I'm going to have to go ahead and go with Jimmy Rivera because he's faced tougher UFC competition, in my opinion. Thomas Almeida, like I said, is a more entertaining fighter. He's got the performances and bonuses to go with it. And like I said, his only decision was the fight of the night as well. So he got KO'd by Cody Garbrandt. Other than that, that was even an entertaining fight. It just didn't go his way. So he's a very entertaining fighter. Jimmy, he's a really smart fighter. He's going to try and get the win more than the performance bonus. So I think he'll slow the fight down and fight smart. So I think he'll win a decision. He could win another way, but I'm thinking Jimmy Rivera would win a decision here. And the only way I really see Jimmy Rivera losing is if he gets caught, because I do think Jimmy Rivera might be just a little bit overall of a better fighter. He is ranked number 4. Thomas Almeida is ranked number 9. So whoever's doing the rankings seems to agree. So I'm going with Jimmy Rivera here. Like I said, he's faced the tougher UFC competition, in my opinion, and he hasn't lost in the UFC yet. So let's get it. Next fight, Patrick Cummins versus Gian Villante. This one, in the beginning, I went with Patrick Cummins, and I'll explain why, but I ended up switching to Gian Villante. He is the hometown kid, the heartthrob. Fuck you mean, dude? Patrick Cummins is number 12 ranked. He's 9-4 total, 5-4 in the UFC. Gian Villante, number 13 ranked in the light heavyweight division. He's 15-7 overall, 5-5 in the UFC. These fighters have an identical reach, leg and arm reach, on UFC.com. Gian, though, is 5 years younger, and most of the notable guys on Gian Villante's record, he's lost to, except for Corey Anderson. And from the tell of the tape, it looks like he was losing that fight, but he caught Corey Anderson. And he's also the hometown guy, so I'm gonna go ahead and go with Gian. Even though in his last 2 fights that made it out of the first round, he did show a susceptibility to takedowns, and Patrick Cummins has showed that he's actually, in his last 3 fights, he's scored multiple takedowns. So he could get taken down and get grinded out. That's the reason I had Patrick Cummins this in the first place, because he's scored about 7 takedowns in his last 3 fights, and Gian Villante, and his tell of the tape and his record, his resume, has shown a susceptibility to takedowns. But my thoughts are it's his hometown, so he's not going to want to get grinded out in his hometown. On top of that, he trains with Chris Weidman, who's actually a really good wrestler, an experienced wrestler. That's Chris Weidman's game. So I'm sure Chris Weidman and his camp has been training takedown defense just so that doesn't happen to him again. I mean, he lost his last fight to Shogun Rua, who even scored 2 takedowns on him. But I'm sure Chris Weidman and his camp has just been drilling takedown defense so that doesn't happen to him in this fight, because I really think that's the only way Gian can lose this fight is if he gets taken down and loses the decision. He could get caught, but I mean, that's the way I see the fight playing out most likely. Patrick Cummins starting to score a few takedowns and out-experience Gian Villante, because Gian Villante can get a little ahead of himself and try and please the fans. He's a cool guy. I've seen some interviews with him, and he's, you know, the class clown, the life of the party type of guy, so he doesn't want the fans booing. So he thinks the fans are booing, he might try and do some entertaining stuff a little out of character. But since he's in his hometown, I believe he's been training that defense, so I went ahead and switched my pick to Gian Villante. So I'm going with Gian. Dennis Bermudez versus Darren Elkins. This has potential to be a good fight, but I think Dennis Bermudez might just run away with this one, and I'll explain why. Dennis Bermudez ranked number 10, 17-8, 9-4 in the UFC. Darren Elkins ranked number 12. He's 12-4 in the UFC, and his overall record, I'm sorry I didn't write that down, but I have it right here. I believe his overall record is like 16-5. Just 1 second, and I'm going to pull that up because I thought I wrote it down. Anyway, we'll just do his UFC record right now because my computer's being slow. So his UFC record is 12-4. So now Dennis Bermudez, on the other end, he's never lost a decision in the UFC. Out of all, 13 fights in the UFC, Dennis Bermudez has never lost a decision. Darren Elkins' last 7 fights, his last 8 fights all would have went to decision, except for his last fight he ended up winning by KO, and that was a fight he was getting smoked. A lot of people were saying his corner should have threw in the towel earlier. It looked like the ref maybe could have stopped the fight earlier, but Darren Elkins was still in there, still fighting, and he ended up getting a spectacular comeback of the year potential knockout versus Mirsad Bektic, which was entertaining as crap. But what I will say is he was just getting beat up in his last fight pretty bad, and it would have went to decision, and that would have made his last 8 fights decision fights for Darren Elkins. And since his last 8 fights would have been decisions, and Dennis Bermudez doesn't lose decisions, Dennis Bermudez usually loses because Dennis Bermudez likes to fight. He's not a guy that's just going in there for the W. Really, he's going in there and fighting. Even when he's winning the fight, he's not just going to let the time go out. He's still going to try and move forward to try and finish you, and in doing so he's got caught in submissions, or he's got clipped coming in. And so his last loss, he did get KO'd by the Korean Zombie, but that can happen literally to anyone. So you got caught, but it's impressive that Dennis Bermudez has not lost any decisions in the UFC, and he's going against a guy that goes to decision a lot, and a guy that was just getting tore up in his last fight. So I'm going with Dennis Bermudez here. And not to mention, Dennis Bermudez has a win over a young Max Holloway. It was a split decision, but he doesn't lose decisions. Max Holloway, it was young. Fuck it, it was in 2013. So 4 years ago, he's got a decision win over Max Holloway. So let's get it. I'm going with Dennis Bermudez. Main event, Chris Weidman, number 5, hometown hero, All-American, whatever they call him. Chris Weidman, some people call him. Chris Weidman, number 5, 13-3 overall, 9-3 in the UFC, going against Kelvin Gastelum, ranked number 8 at middleweight. Even though I believe he probably could be at welterweight, he just misses weight too much. I'll get into it. So he's ranked number 8, 14-2 overall, 9-2 in the UFC for Kelvin Gastelum. Now, Chris Weidman's coming off 3 straight losses to Gegard Mousasi. Let's go, motherfucking the GOAT Gegard. So that's Gegard. Some people say it was controversial because the knees, but really Gegard was going to tear him up, in my opinion, so that wasn't that controversial. So Weidman's coming off 3 straight losses to Mousasi, Yoel Romero, and Luke Rockhold. Gegard Mousasi, Yoel Romero, and Luke Rockhold are all the 3 of the best 5 middleweights in the world. Like, it's not up for debate. They're 3 in the world, not in the UFC, in the world. So Weidman's only 3 losses in his career were his last 3 fights, and they were all against top contenders. He wasn't taking easy fights. He was doing what he had to do to get back to the belt, and it didn't work out for him. But when you're at 185 pounds and you're going against the best guys in the world, really any man can win. Although it's a little different versus Mousasi, but we're not going to get into that here. So Gastelum, though, in my opinion, he's not a true middleweight. He's a guy that ideally would like to fight at 170 pounds, but he eats a lot of mama's cooking, a lot of that good Mexican food, and his discipline, he eats too good for his own good. So he's missed weight on multiple occasions, and now he's got to move up. Dana White forced him to move up weight classes. And this is not good because he's going against a wrestler in this fight. He has looked good at 185, but he's been beating. His last fight got overturned. It was a win, but it got overturned because he was smoking weed with like some other fighters before or after the event. So his fight got overturned for marijuana. But his 3 fights were at middleweight versus Tim Kennedy, Johnny Hendricks, and Vitor Belfort. Well, the Johnny Hendricks fight, it was at UFC 200. I believe it was at middleweight. Either way, he's at middleweight now. Johnny Hendricks, Tim Kennedy, and Vitor Belfort. He beat all of them. But all of them you can say are past their prime. Johnny Hendricks, Tim Kennedy, and Vitor Belfort. You can say any one of those 3 is past their prime. As a matter of fact, Tim Kennedy retired. Johnny Hendricks, past his prime, you could say. Vitor Belfort, past his prime. So that is his only wins at middleweight. Now he's going against a middleweight who's not past his prime, who's not old, as some people would say about these other guys, who's a wrestler on top of everything. So this just seems like a really bad matchup for Kelvin Gastelum here, going against a bigger guy. And wrestling is really where weight cutting is the most crucial, because in wrestling, the bigger guy's gonna hold you down, pin you down, and so since Gastelum is going against a bigger guy here, a wrestler, I just don't see it going good for Kelvin Gastelum. I think this might be the fight that makes him get his discipline right, makes him start, maybe get one of those nutritionists, George, I don't know his name, Lockhart, whatever his name is, get one of those guys in and make that cut to 170, because he's fought Tyron Woodley and he missed weight by 10 pounds. Tyron Woodley had to call his ass Kelvin Fatsalum. Tyron Woodley ended up still coming out and getting the W, split decision W over a guy that had 10 pounds on him. So Vitor Belfort Kelvin Gastelum lost a fight where he had 10 pounds advantage on his opponent. Now he's going into a fight where Chris Weidman's likely got a 10 or more pound advantage on him, and Chris Weidman is an All-American wrestler on top of that. So I just don't see this fight going good for Kelvin Gastelum at all, unless he can land like a Cuban missile knee like Yoel did, or I don't think he's definitely not as experienced as Gordon Musasi. I don't think he's as good as Luke Rockhold either as far as that middleweight. So I don't see this going good for Kelvin Gastelum. On top of all of that, Chris Weidman's the hometown guy, desperate for a win. So Chris Weidman's going to do whatever he can for this win, even if it means a boring fight, even if it means the fans have to boo, even if that means he's got to Gastelum down, get the takedown, hold him down every single round. I believe Chris Weidman will do that. I don't think he's going to try and entertain the fans or anything. I think he's just going for the W to get back on the winning track in the top 5. Because if he loses this fight, it could put him down to rank number 9, rank number 10. Who knows what would happen with Chris Weidman? He might be Bellator bound, honestly. I mean, it'd be hard for the UFC to let a former champ go that took out Anderson Silva for shit. They did other stuff. So I'm going with Chris Weidman here, man. And those are my 4 picks for this main card prediction. The fights are in 2 days. I can't fucking wait. I'll be watching them all the way from the Fight Pass prelims, but that's just me. I love this shit. What the fuck you mean, dude? So that is what it is, man. Let the hitters know what the fuck you talking about in the comments, dude.